I helped consult and put together the course that I think many of you went through. And so over the next, I think we have an hour today, and I would like to spend about 20, 30 minutes of it going through a presentation. But I want this entire session to be very interactive. So throughout the presentation, please, do not feel like you're being rude. Pop up, ask questions. So it's not just like me talking at you guys. I want you to get the most out of the session. And then for the last half hour or so, we'll have a Q&A session. So think of questions that you have about product management. Feel free to be super candid. No question is too stupid, even though this is live on YouTube. And I'm happy to answer to the best of my abilities. And if you want to start, turning on your camera so I can see your faces and sort of gauge, like if this material is landing or not, that'd be great. So yeah. Okay.
Sorry, a little bit of an interruption there. Yeah, feel free. Yeah, perfect. People are turning on their cameras. And just also make sure to mute in between time. Perfect.
Okay.
Fire away, Quyhn.
Cool. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. And unfortunately, I only have one monitor with me today. So let me share. 1 second to set up. Oh, you can share a portion of your screen. Sweet. Dope. All right. Is this properly formatted for you guys? All you should be seeing is a slide that says Product Management 101.
Yes, that's what we can see.
Okay. All right, awesome. Okay, so on today's agenda, very, very high level, I wanted to walk you guys through a typical day in the life of a PM. I wanted to then move to core skills that you would need as a PM, and then walk you through some of my past projects with some screenshots, and then talk about some of the challenges that a PM might face, and then leave the rest of the time for Q&A. But first, before we jump in, I would love to hear any thoughts of like what you would like to hear about. That way I can sort of like cater what I'm talking about to any topics of interest from you guys.
I've spotted some of our code up students are in here as well, so don't be shy. I know you're currently going through the PM bootcamp, so it would be great to hear what you'd like to talk about. Also feel free to just drop it in the chat if you don't want to unmute yourself.
Okay, so hello, my name is Franco. I'd like to know how to transition from a developer role to a product manager role.
Okay, cool.
Actually, I was about to pose the same question on the chat, so I will happily like to know about that.
All right, awesome. So I'll definitely make sure to address that in the Q&A section. Anything else from anyone?
Maybe know a little bit more about your experience in the role and what are maybe the pain points and what you enjoy the most.
Definitely. Okay, cool.
Sorry,
sounds
I would be really interested to know how technical you need to be a product manager.
Okay, great. Cool. So I don't want to flip and invert this presentation. So QA comes first because there's a lot of like really meaty things that we can sort of dive into. So let me go through what I have prepared, but I'll leave a lot of time at the end to answer questions. Okay, so a typical day in the life of a PM. This is like super zoomed out view. And this is taken from my week actually this week. So 8 to 10 a.m. is time that I carve out for myself for focus time. Otherwise, as you can see from the rest of my day, I am in meetings from basically 10 a.m. until 5 p.m., sometimes after, with like maybe a small break for lunch if I'm lucky. So on the right is like a screenshot of just what a typical day looks like. So you see the 8 to 10 block is pretty free. Typically I have some time blocked off. So I have like some deep thought work time. So I can like work on product specs, strategy, or any like docs that are more central team docs. And then starting, this day actually, I guess it began around 11, is a whole lot of one-on-ones, a staff meeting, a launch readiness meeting, team syncs, transition plans, coverage plans, and some engineering meetings. You can think of the regular meetings that typically occur during a week are divided into basically 4 types of meetings. You have the team level meetings. So that's what I would say takes up the bulk of your time. Your one-on-ones with your engineering manager, your tech lead, your designer, marketing, analytics. And that's just like what I could think of off the top of my head. Those are important because you need to regularly check in with your cross-functional partners to make sure that you guys are working side by side and are on the same page. And also, one of your key responsibilities as the PM is to make sure that they're not blocked. Sprint planning, usually every 2 weeks. This is like just par for the course, doing the planning to make sure that everything you're working on is driving you towards the goals that you set at the beginning of the quarter. And then weekly roundups it happens during the off weeks from sprint planning. And this is like it's either a stand-up or like a daily check-in. Then you have your project level syncs, which is sort of like what you see. Rider Quest launch, for example, is something, I'll go into that like in a few slides. But for like any projects that need a lot of close management, you might have like one-off syncs for that. Product team level syncs. So the bigger a company, the more PMs you might have. And so it's important for all of the PMs to sort of be on the same page about like directionally, here's where we are in the planning cycle. Here's where my team is. Do you need help? This is what we're doing, and make sure that there's no collisions. And then the last type of meeting is an org level thing, or org level meeting. So these are things like monthly OKR reviews, quarterly planning. I think that as I'm speaking through this material, it becomes more interesting once you're like at a company and you actually have to like function within like a huge organization with like a dozen teams or so, and everyone has to coordinate. So let me go into core skills. So on the left side is super high level how product management skills are broken up. So you typically are evaluated based on execution. Then next, your vision and your strategy. And the third is your leadership and influence. There are different like archetypes of a PM. There's some very, very like, so, and it roughly maps to like these 3 things that are called out on the left. I think table stakes for any PM, you have to be very strong in execution. And that typically occurs earlier in your career when you are a more junior or entry-level PM. You have to demonstrate, pay your dues, that you can lead a single project and take it through from ideation through execution, manage the launch successfully. And then from there, your scope might expand. As your scope expands, then you're expected to take on the vision and the strategy for the team. So not just like, what are we doing, but like, why are we doing it? And then looking out like 2, 3, 4 steps ahead into the future. That's what you're expected to do as a more senior PM. So over to the right, you can sort of see like it maps straight across roadmaps and PRDs. PRDs are product requirement docs that explain to your team like what is it that we're working on, why are we working on it, and how will the user experience look, what are the requirements from design, marketing, analytics, etc. And then the final last thing is leadership and influence. And so this is where, as a PM, you have to influence without authority. So you are no one's direct manager, but you have to be able to compel the team to do what you have laid out. So this is where it's really important to be a strong leader and be able to influence people. This one's probably like the one that requires the most soft skills, but if you're good at it, you can get away with like not having any technical skills. So in like these 3 sort of like, you can imagine like these 3 points on a spectrum. There were some PMs that like skew this way, this way, this way. The most well-rounded PMs will be great at like all 3 of them. And so over on the right side, this is like cross-functional collaboration, stakeholder buy-in, and also managing up. Cool. And then PM skills. So I was just listing things that like I think that I would expect out of any PM that I'm interviewing or hiring for. So hyper organized. You have to be able to manage expectations really well. You have to be able to synthesize a lot of information and explain complex concepts in a really simple way. So can you distill a really, really difficult concept, like let's say you were trying to explain linear algebra to someone, and the most effective teachers are the ones that can put it simply. And that's what a PM has to do, because every single day you're expected to communicate what your team is doing so that other teams without any context can understand. You're a bridge builder. You have to be extremely goal oriented. So there's like, if you've ever played like those social games where they have like you're like putting together food on an assembly line, like assembling a pizza or something, right? And as the levels increase, it gets harder and harder, and you have many more things to manage. That's basically what being a PM is like in the thick of it. So you have like all these things flying at you, and you still have to assemble that pizza and get out those orders, right? So you have to be very goal oriented, and you have to be very focused. And that's where being super organized comes into play. You're a roadmap builder, you're a visionary, and you're also a team cheerleader. So you're many things to many people. I will pause there for questions. Okay, cool.
I would like to just go ahead. I can see a lot of the things that are on here that I go like, okay, I can do it, but I don't necessarily consider myself to be hyper organized. Like from my own point of view, I'm a little bit more organized chaos, and I'm definitely working on that. But like, so to what extent is that something that is like absolutely crucial, or like I have organization obviously, but like from it's my point of view, obviously I don't know if it's really that bad if other people look at it.
So the reason I call out organization as an important product management skill is because your team depends on you for the structure and the organization of what you're doing. At any given time, you'll be working on minimum 3 to 4 projects simultaneously. And so I think that table stakes, you need to be good at creating documentation that makes sense to people. Often it comes in spreadsheet form. So then everybody has a shared resource to look at and understand what the status is of those projects.
Okay, so it's basically more about making sure you can handle everything without dropping the ball on anything.
Yes, but it's not just a matter of you as an individual being able to handle things. It's, are you able to build capacity on the team? Like, despite like as an individual, you can operate within your organized chaos, but other people understand like what the next steps are. And that's a crucial part of being a PM.
Okay, perfect, thanks.
Yep.
Could you just expand on what you mean by team cheerleader again?
Yeah, okay. So what often happens is, companies go through ups and downs, and the PM, I think I've said before, like the PM is the heart of the team. So you have to be able to inspire people that what you're working on, the future that you're building is worth doing. Otherwise, I mean, there's a lot of like unsexy projects out there that you're. Sorry, does someone have a question? Okay, I'll just continue answering that question then. So let's say that like your unsexy project is just like building out infrastructure, right? You have to be able to inspire your team to want to work on this thing and see why it's valuable.
Okay, thank you. Makes sense.
Okay, cool. Does someone else have a question?
I can see like a lot of similar sort of PM skills between a product manager and a project manager.
Yep.
What would you say like the key differences are between the two roles? Or is it just like the sort of technical field that you're working in, or are there any other sort of big key differences that you would call out?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. There is definitely a difference between project managers and product managers. Project managers, the top skill for a project manager is to be organized and keep multiple functions on track towards a specific goal. product manager defines what the thing being built is. So I think that, and I hope this doesn't like offend any project managers on the call, but like project management is a subset of the skills that you need as a product manager. In larger companies, often there will be a product manager and a project manager to take on some of like just the organizational and daily sort of administrative tasks that you need to do to move a project along, and then give updates to the rest of the organization or the rest of the company of like what the status of the project is. The product manager sets the future. So they'll talk about like, what's the problem that we're trying to solve here? And then what are the solutions that we have in front of us, and why did we select the one that we did? Which is not in scope of a project manager. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. All right. Any other questions?
Yeah, so about that, I don't know if you are going to talk about it later maybe, but the ideas for the projects or the projects that you build, where do they come from? They come from upper management, or who decides what's next for the company, and what is your role in that decision?
That's a great question. As the product manager, a lot of it is expected to come from you. And this answer may vary depending on the size of the company. The larger the company, obviously, there's a little bit less autonomy. The smaller the like 10, 20 people startup, the product manager defines, the future of the product. So you have a lot of autonomy and you have a lot of expectation to build out like what the product looks like. And I think it also depends on like the culture of the company, whether it's top down or bottoms up. But in general, I would expect a product manager to define what to do next and be able to provide a lot of strong reasoning for why we're about to do it. So it's a lot of ownership, which is, I think, what makes the product management job so appealing to a lot of people. But then also like there's a wide spectrum and a lot of room to like succeed fantastically or fail miserably.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, cool. So then I wanted to walk you guys through some of my past projects over my career. So I pulled out a few just like visually appealing projects from the first year of my career to the last year, and I forgot to include anything in between, but you can look it up. Okay, so past projects that I worked on. First, I want to talk to you guys about mobile gaming, which is where I started like the first 3-4 years of my career. And this screenshot is actually from the very first game that I worked on. So let me take you back in time to 2011, 2012, when games like Farmville, Mafia Wars, Ravenswood Fair was super, super popular and pulling in like hundreds of thousands of dollars per day. And this is where you sort of start to see like product management really gain a foothold in tech. And back in these days, I think like the skill sets that you needed as a product manager were very different. So these were like the social mobile games. This is back when it was super easy to acquire users. So it was like green pastures, because acquiring users was super cheap, like really, really viral, basically. I'm sure you guys can recall back in 2011, 2012, where you would get like these requests from friends, like come play come join my farm on Farmville or whatever. So it was cheap. It was really, really cheap to get millions of users. At that scale, it meant that even if you got like a couple cents per users, you were making a lot of money. And then so that sort of created the space for product management as a role to be really important. And so in my early days as a product manager, what I focused on actually was analytics and a lot of live ops. Live ops are operations, and it was very growth focused. So it was measuring like, okay, if we were to run this promotion, a sale on these virtual goods on this day, what did the sales number looks like? Can we adjust quickly? What kind of promotion should we run next week? And basically, it was a very analytics focused type of role. And so as a result, you had a lot of consultants and iBankers actually coming into the role. And that's where a lot of people, like they changed from those careers into product management. So back in the early days, it was very like, green pastures, anyone who was good with like numbers, good with spreadsheets, there was a place for you in product management. Over the years, I've seen that like shift a little bit more, but this was sort of like the early part of the 2010s. And then over here to the right, just included some screenshots from the games that I worked on. So they were very like mid-core or social games. Alice's Wonderland was the first one, and then Lucky Bingo was another one. And then most recently, and then so after that, I worked on, I moved to hardware. I worked on the software part of this credit card that was supposed to hold all of your cards, called Quyhn. It was big in the US. I'm not sure if it really made it overseas. The thing that killed it was that it was based off of this magnetic stripe. So if you look at your credit card, you see the magnetic stripe. And the cool thing about it is that like it would automatically, you could like add up to 10 cards or so, or maybe 8 cards, and that stripe would dynamically change based off of a button press. And so I was like super hyped, and I worked on the app for that. That was cool because I got to work on like Bluetooth and like interactions with hardware, which was cool, but also really, really frustrating because hardware takes forever to do. And there's so many more opportunities to make mistakes in hardware that will set you back for weeks at a time. So go ahead. Someone's unmuted. I think maybe Lucho.
I think he just entered again into the meeting, so I've just muted him. And if you have a question, feel free to unmute yourself. I'm sorry if I have just forcefully muted you there. No. Perfect. Okay, cool. And then from there, I worked at a few other startups in between, and then now finally I'm at Lyft. So the last project that I wanted to walk you guys through is something that I worked on most recently. I know that Lyft is not yet in Europe, but you guys are probably familiar with Uber, which is our primary competitor. They're a lot bigger than Lyft, but the apps are very, very similar. And so the most recent thing that I worked on as part of the Rider Early Lifecycle team is something called Rider Quest. So coming from a gaming background, I really, really believe in the power of behavior economics, the power of gaming to alter user behavior. So the thing that I wanted to work on was a quest system. If you've played any games in the past, you know that like the quest system is designed in such a way that you have a list of actions that you're supposed to take in order to get a reward. And by presenting a visual interface for people to see what actions those are and what the reward is, you compel people to take that action, thus altering their behavior. So we didn't have anything like that in Lyft before, and it's still not launched at 100%. It's still in experiment form right now. So this is a couple months ago, and I began it at the beginning of the year. What you see to your right is what we have out on Android right now. And the goal was to create a task completion system for riders to drive behavior changes towards high LTV actions. So the way that this works is looking at LTV as lifetime value. So we looked at all of our data to understand like, okay, who are our high LTV users? What kind of actions do they demonstrate? For example, things like high LTV users typically take at least 3 rides within the first week. So then we look at, okay, what about the average user? Do they take about like 2 rides within the first week? And so then we said, okay, if 2 is like pretty achievable by the median, then can we push people to taking the third action or the third ride by giving them some nominal reward, like a 10% discount off of like a ride for next month? And in that way, that's how we began defining these actions for the Rider Quest. Cool. And then to sort of show you guys like the evolution of a product, to the left right here is what our initial prototypes had. So you can see that it looks very different than what we ended up with on the right. Each of these screenshots is actually just like taken from past presentations that I've given to my team or like leadership to get them hyped on the idea. Once people visualize something, they get more excited about it. But the point of this slide is just to show you like how much things can change, even though you're talking about the same concept over time. Cool, so we are right on track for time. The last thing I really want to talk about was just like, what are some of the challenges of being a PM? So
obviously this is like very biased from my perspective. The two that I want to call out is stakeholder buy-in and managing up. You'll notice that these are both very soft skill oriented. And the reason for that is like hard skills you can learn and you'll get better at, right? Like, you know, you'll get better at writing, you'll get better at organizing your docs. But the crux of being a PM is actually your soft skills. When you interact with other people on your team, do you make them excited to work on the product? Do you are you able to get them to believe that what you're working on is worth it? And even more importantly, outside of your team, how well do you communicate what it is that you're working on, why it's important, and how it ladders up to the company's goals? And then so that's like general teamwork. Stakeholder buy-in is important, especially if your product depends on other people. So this is more typical of like a platform product. So platform products typically are not very valuable in and of themselves. They depend on other teams utilizing them in order to realize the impact of that product. For that reason, it is crucial that other teams see the value and see the value of like what you're working on and then are willing to integrate with it. And the last thing is just managing up. This one, like for any company really, leads and like execs have the ability to thrash you a lot. So, you know, I would say like 80% of your job is like your actual job. And then 20% is sort of just like playing defense and making sure that like the work that you're doing is well represented, that there's no surprises to anyone. Cool. So we are at the 30-minute mark. So I'll pop over to Q&A. While people are thinking of questions, I'll address the one that was raised a few minutes ago at the beginning. So transitioning from something technical or maybe non-technical into being a PM. So I would say, I'll talk about first, like doing that from within the same company. So say that you're an engineer or like another function at a company and you're interested in being a PM. The first thing that I would do, and I've seen this done successfully at a few companies, but I don't think it's like super easy by any means. I think the first thing that you would do is, if there is an existing PM, I would talk to them first and understand like what's the scope of what they do, and ask them, like flag to them like, hey, this is something that I'm interested in doing. And in that way, they know that if there's opportunities that they can create in the future or things that they can delegate to you, then they can start doing that. And that's really useful because then you can start already doing the job that you want and getting a taste for it yourself. So that's probably the easiest way, is getting like an existing PM to help you out and delegate tasks to you. But then another way that you could do it is to ask someone in your leadership chain, like, hey, I'm interested in becoming a product manager. And say like, are there any opportunities for me to take on like a small project and lead it, you know? And so, yeah, I would begin there, but the first step is just surfacing like, hey, I'm interested in a product role. What are the needs of the company? Even better, you could be proactive about it and identify some of the needs yourself, basically doing the product management role before you have it. Does that answer your question?
Yes, to me. Thanks.
We've also got a question here in the chat, Quyhn, from Agni. So what kind of hard skills would you advise someone to pick up who's interested in starting their career as a PM? Should someone focus on SQL or other coding languages, or data analysis, visualizations, UX, UI, wireframe, API, and growth metrics, etc.?
Yes. Okay. So the first skill that I would focus on is actually SQL. Having a basic understanding of it will be super, super important. It will give you a solid foundation of hard skills to lean on. The more you can understand data, the more credibility you build with your engineers, with your analysts. And actually, the analyst role is really helpful at a company, but at smaller companies, you often don't have it. So I'm at companies small to mid-size, where I am the analyst as well. So having the SQL skills has been like a crucial unlock in unblocking yourself, because you can pull your own data and you can get like a table stakes understanding of like what the product is. understanding your product, I'm biased because I come from like an analytics background, but I do really believe that understanding your product begins with understanding the analytics of it, right? So like, what do your active users look like? What are the different surfaces of your platform? And I'm thinking about like consumer products right now and like apps of the different screens in your product. What kind of sessions do they drive? What are the hot, like the tap zones that are most frequently visited? What are your different funnels look like? What does your onboarding look like? What's your stickiness? So like weekly active users over monthly active users. And then from there, you can understand like, what does your problem space look like? So beginning with SQL and beginning with analytics gives you an entire like really exciting universe of data and like information to play with. And then from there, so that's the SQL piece. I would also understand basic wireframing. So doing some of that yourself, especially as you're putting together PRDs. Tools out there, I mean, they seem to change every year, but the hot ones right now are Sketch, Figma. If you ever played with Photoshop when you were younger, you know, like you have an understanding of layers and like how different things go on top of each other. But yeah, like, oh, Lucid Chart is also another one. But my advice would be hop on something free like Lucid Chart and begin diagramming out different wireframes yourself. And that will then ground your understanding of what you want the user flow to look like, whether it would work out before you kick it over to your designers, your engineers to work on. In a pinch too, you can also like do Google Slides, which I just presented off of, and then like create diagrams that way. That's really easy. And then coding languages. So actually, I don't think that you need to know any coding languages to become a successful PM. It certainly helps. Like, you know, the more you know, it always helps, but it's not crucial, in my opinion. You're not specialized as an engineer. I think that you need to know enough about coding to be dangerous. You know, understanding the difference between like, if I want a copy change, is that going to be like a 10-minute fix, or is that going to be like, you know, 2-3 days? So having an understanding of how basic systems work is what you need to know. And then I guess the last thing that I'll focus or that I'll talk about for this question is KPIs and growth metrics. I want to say that you just have to have a baseline understanding. So we used to refer to a set of metrics in gaming as like vanity metrics. So this is like monthly active users, weekly active users, your retention, and your acquisition. Metrics are generally broken up into acquisition, engagement, and retention are the 3 buckets. And that goes from like top of the funnel all the way down to like the end of it. Acquisition is just like, you know, who are the users? How many users are you getting on board? And how are they converting to becoming like a real user? And then retention is like, you know, if they stick around in week 1 because they signed up, do they stick around for week 2, week 3, week 4, month 1, month 2? And then engagement is like, what do they do once they're on your product? Cool. Did that answer your question, or anything you want me to like double click into or follow up on?
I just wanted to ask a question. What do you like least enjoy about being a product manager? What are the bits of your job where you're like, oh, I wish I didn't have to do this?
Yeah, let me think about that. Okay, yeah, I definitely have an answer. So often what happens as a PM is like you often end up being the catch-all for a lot of things. So whenever anyone in the company has any question related to your product space, like when I was on driver onboarding, for example, like the process of getting a normal human to becoming a sign-up driver on Lyft, anytime there's anything like remotely related to it, it would be sent my way. And the expectation is like, you either answer it, or you figure out a way to get this person to answer. And often you don't know the answer. And so you have to figure out like, okay, how do I either get the knowledge or redirect them to someone who will know? And then how do I know who will know the question, you know? So it's a lot of like sleuthing and like digging to figure out who knows what and how do I like efficiently reroute these people. Because one crucial part of your job too is building capacity within yourself. I think a common mistake that people make as PMs is like you're so used to being highly capable, you're so used to being able to do doing a lot of things yourself that your inclination is to want to do it yourself. But you have the same number of hours in a day that everyone else does. And as your scope and your responsibility grows as a PM, you have to do more with the same amount of time. So you have to figure out how to be more efficient with your time. One thing that was hard for me to learn was how to delegate. And being comfortable asking other people to take on, different parts of the job or like the team. But once I learned how to do that, that like freed up a lot of my time, and it actually made me a better PM.
Thank you.
I also have a small question. I unfortunately I came later, so I'm really sorry if I'm asking something which is already covered. I have some issues identifying my role right now. So I'm officially named product owner, but my assumption is that I'm actually going more in the direction of a product manager. So just to give you a small background, I'm working for a car manufacturing company in the digital world, so digitalization. But my understanding of a product owner role would be more in an agile environment. And especially in the car manufacturing, it's not really the case because it's a kind of a mix between trying to bring digital products in an agile world, but still having the tight schedules of releasing cars to a specific date.
Yeah.
So I'm more or less the customer for an external company which actually develops the product. They have their own internal product owner. I am more or less the single point of contact in the company for this product, meaning I'm more the relationship to sales, to legal, to user experience, to other products which are related to this, to my products, so on and so forth. So I'm also the one standing up for management in case something goes wrong or if it actually goes good. But as I said, I want to drag this too long. The question is if you would actually call that more of a product owner or product manager, or how far am I from the two roles which I described? Thank you.
That's actually a really, really great question. So thanks for asking it. And it's actually something I see a lot is like this ambiguity in what is a product manager versus like what is the role that I'm doing that has the word product in the title. So what you just described is you stand at the center of a lot of different stakeholders and you're expected to accomplish something, add organization to chaos, basically. So the first thing I would say is don't try to fit a square peg into a round hole. So like if agile doesn't work for your company, then I would not try to like force it simply because that's what many books say that a product manager is supposed to use or do. I would back up a little bit and ask like, what are the things that your company needs right now from you in order to move towards their goals? So not knowing much more about your company, I would assume, it's just like you have to launch a product, you have to do it within certain guidelines, and you have to hit certain numbers. So work from there and figure out how to get that done. And then I would also, like now I'm like answering the question from a career management point of view, but when you're in that type of like ambiguous and not well-defined role, you actually, and I say this like all of my friends who are in similar positions, like take control of like your position by writing down a list of like everything that you're responsible for, everything that you're doing. Talk to your manager about it and say like, this is everything, like the scope of everything that I'm currently doing. And I wanted to know, like, is this the right set of things for me to focus on? Is this like gonna help the company move forward? And if they can agree to that, then you're like, okay, great, then I'm gonna do it. So now you have a well-defined set of responsibilities that you can execute on that is also doable within like the time that you have. But then the second thing is talk to your manager about like, well, here's a set of things that I am doing. And here's a set of things that like I want to be doing. So if you want to be a product manager, talk about like you would be doing things like creating the new product, creating the roadmap, setting the strategy for it. And so when you create those two lists, you can sort of see the delta between what you're doing versus what you want to do. And I would bring that to your manager and I would tell them like, here's where I'm at, and here's where I want to be. How do we get me here? And if they're a good manager, they should like help you get there.
Okay. So I think, thank you for the answer. I think my manager itself doesn't know either the difference between those. As I said, we are a big car manufacturing company, which is really focused or has been focused on this V-shaped model for years. So I think this whole new roles which we were given are just to somehow trying to squeeze this agile world into this old world. It was, as I said, more for me personally, because if I want to, I don't know, for the future, try to reorient myself, I wasn't really sure if I should orient myself towards product manager or product owner, as I'm actually called. But thanks, I still got a hint in which direction I should actually head.
Yeah, I think it depends on what you want to do. Typically, product management is exists within the tech space, and so there's not a lot of hardware products that have product managers per se. Yeah, maybe I should ask my friend at Tesla, but I can speak more to the software side for sure.
Well, I'm still working in the digital world, so we are working with software products. I'm not actually into the car manufacturer. But anyways, I don't want to take this too long. I'll only talk about me. As I said, thank you for the input, and yeah, that helped.
Okay.
I have a question. You mentioned that most of the ideas come from the PO, but how will you promote or encourage other team members, devs, as an example, to share their ideas for the product in a healthy way that doesn't lead to chaos at the end?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we definitely view it as important to source ideas from other teammates. And the way that we do this is we usually define some themes for the quarter or for the year of like what we want to do as a company. So like, let's say right now we at Lyft want to focus on understanding our drivers better. Well, now you've taken something that was like super open-ended and like focused a little bit more. And then typically like tactically what we'll do is give a presentation on like what does it mean to understand our drivers, what is the end state that we want to arrive at, and then you get all these smart people in the room, your engineers, your designers, your marketers, and you tell them like, here's the theme, here's our end state that we want to arrive at, how might we get there, and from there we start sourcing ideas. What this could look like is like, so people start thinking about it in the room. I'll set up like either an email address or a document where people can start contributing their ideas. And then we'll hold like a follow-up meeting to discuss some of the ideas, or like an ideas pitch basically. So to get ready for an ideas pitch, I'll like create a spreadsheet. I love spreadsheets, where I have like, what's the idea? Who's the owner, or who's it coming from? What might it look like? So, I asked the person coming up with the ideas pitch to come up with like wireframes and setting the expectation that doesn't have to be super polished, but I just want to see, like what you're sort of thinking, like visualize that, and then ask them for a swag at impact sizing. So like if we were to do this, like how much impact could we drive? How many users would this affect? And that's sort of just a sanity check to make sure that the idea is grounded in some reality.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. And the other thing I'll say too is like whenever you're soliciting ideas from your team, it's always a great move because you're like, hey, like we're interested in hearing from you, and that also helps with morale. But the caveat that I would say is like, make sure that you add some structure around it. Otherwise, it'll be very chaotic. You'll kind of just be like treading water, spinning your wheels for a bit, without really arriving at like what's a solid idea that we can execute on.
Yeah, that was exactly the main reason why I asked, because we were trying to promote other ideas coming from other places. Yep. Otherwise, it was always centralized in the same minds per se.
Yeah, and if you were to do that, like always provide a structure. So like think of it as like a questionnaire, like what is the idea? Who will it impact? What's the impact sizing? What might it look like? And then so when you provide prompts like that in a very structured way, it forces people to ground their ideas in reality, and then also like refine it a little bit so that, maybe then in answering those questions for themselves, they'll realize like, this is actually not a great idea, and you don't have to be the one to do that for them.
Yeah, I think a structure was the answer that I was looking for, because we have we have a ideas bank now, but sometimes it's really the organizing is really hard to get something out of it.
Yeah, and if you even want to get more granular, depending on like how senior the team is or the teammates are, you could ask them like, give me some estimates for how much eng effort this would be, how much design effort this would be, what are the marketing needs, what are the dependencies. So just like forcing them to think through the idea a little bit deeper before they kind of expect it to be executed on.
Thank you very much. It's really helpful.
Awesome.
Okay, so I have a question. How do you become a product manager? Because it's a role that the name says it's a manager. So you usually need experience for that. But how do you gain that experience? There is another role related to product that isn't the manager, or how do you do that?
There are a couple of paths. So I think that one of the more common paths that I've seen today is people go to business school and then they come out and become product managers. It really depends on the company hiring. And there is a catch-22 where in order to get a product management role, you need to have product management experience, which is not great. So if you're a new grad, this is a little bit easier because there will usually be like associate product management programs where you can interview and like, get the job. That's like path one. As a new grad, enter the field because no one has expectations for you to like, have previous experience. The second path is to, within your existing company, look for opportunities and then start doing the role yourself. And this one, you have to have like more soft skills and you have to have advocates. So like over the course of my career, I think like the importance of soft skills has become like just super, super clear. But being able to talk to people and ask them questions, and when you get someone on your side and they become an advocate for you, it makes life, it's like playing life on easy mode, So yeah, I mean, I can answer that at a high level. I'm trying to like think of a way to be more specific.
No, it's okay. And related to that business part, is that mandatory to have like an MBA or something like that?
Definitely not. So I actually just finished a round of like APM interviews over the last couple of weeks for the Lyft APM program. The things that you should be ready to answer and like during an interview for product management roles is you have to have a structure. So you typically begin the interview, like they'll give you a product sense question and you'll begin the interview by outlining your structures. Like first, I'm going to confirm the problem that we're solving for. And that's just step one. And if the candidate doesn't do that, then like, I'm like, oh, well, we got to back up. Like, let's agree on the problem that we're solving for first before we start brainstorming solutions. And then you talk about the users, you talk about like the user pain points, what they might need. And then once you've like clarified and talked through like what the problem is and why you're solving it, then you can talk about solutions. And that's kind of just like the basics of product management, right? Like, how do you know that you're building the right thing? Well, first you have to begin by identifying the correct problem. There are a million solutions that are very prescriptive, but if you haven't identified the right problem, then you're not even going in the right direction. You're just like driving blind. I would pick up one book that I found really useful is Cracking the PM Interview. They have a really great framework for thinking through problems.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, can I have a question? Okay, my name is Izan. How to choose the right objective or metrics if you create a new product? You said before you like growth, retention, engagement. So how we new product manager prioritizing the new product, prioritizing the metrics?
So can you just repeat the question again?
how do you choose the right one objective for the new products metrics? How I think what the right metrics for the new product?
Oh, okay. So if you're coming up with a new product, the very first thing that you want to answer is like what the, or like that you want to be able to define is like what the problem is, right? Out of that problem, you can then get to like what the right success metric should be. So if I'm trying to think of like an example. If the problem is like you have really high amount of leads coming into like a platform, but you don't have any signups, right? Then so like let's say that you're trying to drive app downloads. You see a lot of people clicking on your ads, but you don't see people installing the app or finishing like signing up to become a user by creating an account with your product. So the problem that you're stating is like we have really high leads and a lot of like traffic, but we do not get people at signups. So then you dive deeper into that, and then you look at the funnel and you see where you're getting drop off. So then your success metric then would be a number of signups. So by beginning with the problem in mind, you are already answering what the final solution should be.
Okay, that's clear. Thank you.
Any other questions that like popped up during the presentation? There's no question too specific or too stupid. Happy to answer.
Maybe I can jump in here because you showed us a lot of really cool products that you worked on. Can you tell us a little bit more about maybe ones that have not been such a success, or at what point do you decide that this isn't working and you need to kind of change around, back off and change around?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So there are a lot of failures that you'll encounter as a PM. And so I'll speak to one example from a couple of months ago when I was on the driver team at Lyft. So a couple of months ago, we had this project where we were surfacing a questionnaire to drivers, like new drivers who were signing up. And the questionnaire was a series of like, do you intend to drive part-time or full-time? Do you, how many hours per week do you intend to drive? And just getting a sense of like their intention. And so we launched this product. We invested like 2 to 3 weeks of engineering time into it. But when we launched it, we realized that it actually like would not have any connection to or we had no way to leverage the information that we were gathering. And so the best, and like that failure occurred due to a lack of communication between teams. So it's like basically just like one hand's not speaking to the other hand. And so the way that we handled that is like, you actually just have to be really transparent and honest with your team about what happened, why it happened, and how you'll avoid that mistake in the future. And that also promotes like a really healthy culture of transparency and accountability. So we just quickly pivoted and we said like, look, we made a mistake. So here's what we're gonna do about it. And we're gonna cut our losses right now and just move forward.
Thanks very much. I think we've got time for, we don't want to take too much of your time, but maybe one last question, if anyone's got any burning questions to ask. I saw there was also in the chat, just the end of Agni's question there, asking a little bit more about any frameworks we should look at. Oh, I see somebody has actually sent a link. Thanks very much. Some frameworks. I don't know if you want to comment any more on that, Quyhn.
There's also a circle method that is pretty popular, and that's like a handy acronym to use to like identify and like dissect a problem. Ironically, I don't remember what it stands for, but it's very Googleable.
Everything's Googleable in the end. Perfect. I mean, if there's no more questions there, thank you very much, Quyhn. You're an absolute rock star. Thanks for taking some time this morning. I hope we've helped answer. It seems like a lot of people had some questions there, and I hope we've helped answer them and just give you a little bit more information about what the product manager role is about. Thanks everyone else for turning up. We hope you've enjoyed the event, and have a good evening or good day, I guess. Quyhn, you're in from Las Vegas. Good evening elsewhere. And yeah, if you're interested in joining any more of our events, CodeOp's got lots and lots of events coming up between now and December and onwards. So feel free to just follow us on Eventbrite. And we've got lots of other stuff in store for you. Thanks very much, everybody.
Awesome.
Thanks, Quyhn.
Thanks everyone for coming. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a nice day.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.